Yeah, to Cape May, New Jersey.
Oh, wow. Cape May. That's fun.
I was there 2 years ago. The last year we didn't go. This year we're going.
Sounds awesome, Howie.
Yeah, that's my enjoyment. That's my vacation with my group and have a good time. Staying at the Grand Hotel at Cape May, New Jersey.
Awesome.
Nice.
Howie, I'm just going to interrupt you there. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I'm just going to let everyone know that we're currently live on YouTube. So I'm just going to we'll do it again when we're officially at 6:30, but this is the Queens
Moment.
Community Board 6 Land Use and Housing Committee meeting. We start at 6:30. We're going to be streaming the whole meeting, where the first hour is going to be our committee meeting and presentation from the developers and DCP. And then at 7:30, we're going to have a hard stop when we start our public hearing. So if you're here and you see yourself, your name or your face on the screen, that means you're either a board member or presenting to the board, or
I
in some
understand. I
capacity.
understand. Thank you.
I'm telling everyone though, Howie. So,
Okay,
but I'm
all
glad you
right.
get it. Okay.
Okay.
Um, and then if you signed up to speak, then you probably don't see yourself yet on the screen, but we will promote you to be on the screen and have the privileges to speak when it is your turn. So that said, we're still 2 minutes away from officially starting, and I'll probably say all of that again. So bear with me, but I just want to make sure everyone's oriented. And just to let everyone know, we are live streaming on YouTube, so we'll just keep the chit chat to a minimum to keep the process streamlined. I probably started a little early, but I also am always worried it won't work. So this time it worked easily. And thanks for being here, and happy November. And just while we have 1 minute before we officially start, I will just respectfully ask board members that are on the committee to use to turn on their camera, so we have more faces and less just squares with names. If you're somewhere where you can do that, I think that adds to the ambiance of these committee meetings if we have just faces and not just names. So thank you for considering doing that. And I've spoken long enough that it is now. What was that?
And since we're all so handsome and lovely, then this makes us a good
Of course,
meeting.
that too. So it is officially 6:30, so I'll just welcome everyone again. My name is Alexa Weitzman. I'm chair of Queens Community Board 6. I use she, her pronouns. This is the Queens Community Board 6 Land Use and Housing Committee meeting. It's going to be in 2 parts tonight. The whole meeting is being streamed to our YouTube page. The first hour is going to be a presentation and conversation with land use committee members. There's a hard stop at 7:30 when we're going to transition to a public hearing. People have submitted comments and signed up to speak at tonight's public hearing, and we want to give them a chance to be heard. And with that said, board committee members, please, during the discussion part, since we do have that hard stop, if we could keep comments streamlined and kind of use a take space, make space model for the conversation. And with that, I will hand it over to the committee chair of the Land Use Committee, Pramit Kumar.
Thanks, Alexa. I really appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen. You all know by now that I like to do PowerPoints for these meetings, so let me know when you can see my screen.
See it.
Perfect. So welcome to the Land Use and Housing Committee meeting. Today's agenda focuses on one topic. It is the ULURP application that we are considering for 9881 Queens Boulevard. It's a rezoning. So I'll start with giving my own quick introduction to the rezoning application. A lot of it is going to be familiar to you from a presentation we did in this committee meeting this January when we had the applicant come before us, but I'll reiterate some of those points from earlier. Then I'll hand it over to the applicant for their presentation. Then our committee members will have a chance to speak and do some Q&A. Then we'll transition to the public hearing. As Alexa said, we have some written testimony that we'll read, and we also have some speakers who've signed up to speak. Each of those speakers will get 2 minutes, and then we'll recap with some next steps. So with that being said, why don't I get started with my introduction? So here is the area that we're talking about. On the left is where it is in Google Maps. As you can see, it's right along Queens Boulevard, 9881. On the right is a street view image, so you sort of know what it looks like. This plot of land has a tower diner, which is familiar to many of us. It also has the Ornaton Synagogue, which is the former Trilon Theater, which you can sort of see in this image. Here is the brief from the ULURP application. So the applicant is Trilon LLC. That's the name they're operating under. The project brief, basically in summary, is they want to build a 15-story mixed-use, 153,400 square foot development. It's going to have about 162 apartments, around 136,000 square feet of residential space, 17,000 plus square foot for commercial. And some of these might have honestly changed a little bit, so the applicant can sort of detail the specifics in their presentation, but this is what was originally submitted. And just so people know, we are not going to be voting as a committee today. Something we actually decided to make things a little more streamlined is we're going to use this meeting just to get public input, just to get our questions answered. Then next week, we're going to have a full board meeting where we can potentially get some more comments from people if that's something that they want to do. And then following that, after we've had all these comments, all the public input, all these wonderful sort of feedback that we receive, we'll sort of consider all of that and then take an online committee vote in advance of the full board vote in our December CB6 meeting. So plenty of time for us to hear everyone's opinions in this issue before we take a vote. We know that there's a petition online that has several thousand signatures, and we really appreciate the community's concerns. And just to summarize, one big bucket of concern that's being raised by this petition is, should anything be built at all, or can we save these existing structures? And this is something that we had in our January meeting, but I want to sort of reiterate it again for people to know what the board can and can't do. So as you can see from the quote on the right in the New York Times, the Trilon was deemed not to meet the Landmark Commission's criteria. Our board also has a letter from Landmarks to that effect as well. So there's no power that we have as a community board to prevent any of these structures from being demolished, from something else being built in its place. There's something that's called as of right development. So if the developer wanted to develop at this site tomorrow, they could do so as of right, and the community board would not be able to do anything about it. So just for the interest of sort of everyone being on the same page and baselining, I wanted to sort of get that out there off the bat. The other big bucket of concern that people have is, what kind of building will be built there in place of what's there currently, and how well will it fit our community's vision of what should go in that area? And that's what the community board does have a say in, because the applicant has come to us for a rezoning application. So our goal here is to evaluate the applicant's request for rezoning. And to reiterate something that we always say, the community board's recommendation is only advisory. We have no sort of official weight, no formal authority. We only recommend. What's going to happen is the ULURP process is, after our recommendation, going to go to the borough president, the city planning commission, and the city council. But because we are the local sort of neighborhood input, our recommendation still carries some weight there. I also want to sort of simplify the 3 outcomes from our recommendation process. So there's 3 things that can happen. The first is the rezoning could get rejected. So if that happens, the developers, again, they can still build as of right. They just can't build in excess of the current zoning. So currently it's an R7-1 zone. So the developers could still build something that looks like the building on the left. That's sort of what happens in an R7-1 zone. The other option is the rezoning gets accepted as it currently is, as the applicants currently want it to. So if that happens, we'll rezone the area to an R8X zone. So the developers can build something like what you see on the right. And the applicant's going to present in a little bit their actual vision, but just so you have an image, it'll be something to that scale. With this rezoning, the developers would also have to build mandatory inclusionary housing. So our neighborhood would get some much needed affordable housing as well in exchange for the upzoning. The third option is the community board, and this is something that we've been doing sort of all year. The community board negotiates with the developer to get the kinds of concessions that are helpful for our community. So we've been in discussions with this developer for quite a while now to let our thoughts be known. As I said earlier, the committee met with the developer in January. We've been in conversation with them throughout the year. They've already made some changes to their designs based on our feedback, which I'm sure they'll discuss in their presentation. But again, at the basic level, those are the three options that we have. And to reiterate, there's no power that the community board has where we say to the developer, you can't build anything on that lot and you have to keep everything as is. We'll see a lot of sort of community written feedback to that effect. But again, to reiterate, the community board does not have that power. Cool. So with all that being said, why don't we go now to the applicant presentation? I'll stop sharing my screen and hand it over to the applicant. Eric, is that you?
That's me. Thank you very much for making the time. You should be able to see me now.
Yep.
Thanks a lot for making the time, everybody. We greatly appreciate it. And we're looking forward to a new decade or new era in New York City with the elections last evening and our new leadership. And we want to thank everybody who's been in place through the last decade for all the help they've given the city. We're here tonight, as you just correctly pointed out, for a rezoning. And I'll ask Austin in a moment, if you can, Austin, while I'm talking, to pull up the screen, please. Austin is a gentleman who helps produce the presentation you're seeing. And throughout the presentation, I will say Austin, similar to Surrey, to change the page. You can stay right here for a second, Austin. I'll start with the introduction that you just gave and just enhance it a little bit. We're thrilled to be here tonight. I've been doing this job for 30 years in New York City, and I've watched Queens Boulevard. I've grown up with it, and I've seen that the potential that it has to create housing that's transit-rich, transit-based, smart development. It's always struck me as an irony that the taller buildings are not just on Queens Boulevard, but also, as I'll show you, behind it on the side streets.
This is what it's about.
While the avenue and the boulevard has really remained. I'm sorry, there's some background noise there. I apologize. I don't know if you could hear that.
I muted someone, so you should be good now. But
Thank
everyone,
you.
just while we have the floor, just please keep yourself on mute unless you're actively speaking. You've been called on or you're presenting. Thank you.
So thank you. So we're excited to be here tonight because I think Queens Boulevard is deserving of creating great developments that respect both the history, as you just mentioned, and allow for future development. And I think you could see here that the R71 zoning that is in place on Queens Boulevard right now does not incentivize anybody to build anything really. And that's why you see a lot of properties along Queens Boulevard that remain substantially underdeveloped, and it's why you see developers coming in asking for rezonings. Next slide, please. This application is a very well-designed development that we think is going to provide a lot of great things for you. As we just called out, it's a rezoning. You can see on the left-hand side from an R71 C12 to an R8X C24 zoning district. We've been meeting with you in excess of 3 years about this application. We met about a year before COVID. We met during COVID, and we responded, and now we're meeting again. And we're hoping to be certified for this reason. We are certified right now, of course, for the rezoning application. We're hoping to be in front of city planning around the end of the year. The request is in front of you to allow for a 15-story mixed-use building with residential and commercial uses. It's proposed to have 153,000 square feet of total floor area, which will include 136,000 square feet of residential floor area, which will include within that 44 affordable apartments. under option 2 of the city's mandatory inclusionary housing program. Now that's important because I'm going to show you a map in a second that's going to show you the bare minimal and little amount of affordable housing that has been created in this neighborhood in the past few years. In fact, there's been so few that I've been one of the major proponents of it, creating Parkway Hospital just a few years back. That will create affordable housing for seniors, and I'm very proud of that. This development will create affordable housing for people of all different age groups. Next slide, please. We're also happy to say that this development is being built, next slide, please, in conjunction with 32BJ, who we're working right now on creating an agreement between us, and in good faith, we are working towards that, where the building will be operated by union labor. This slide that I'm showing you right now starts to put you in context for those of you who are looking at this for the very first time. We're asking you to build a 15-story building. Now, you saw a slide at the beginning and it described what the building could look like. That is true. That is potentially one outcome that you saw in that slide. But if you read the language in that slide, you should have seen a sentence in there that said, on larger lots, tall, slender buildings can be built. That's because R71 is a sky exposure plane district. So what that means is on a site that's this large, the developer would be able to build a tall building. It wouldn't be able to be the fattest building or the widest building, but it would be able to build a tall building, probably very similar to the height that we're requesting here. And we think that it makes sense because, as you can see here, the 15 stories that we're proposing, which is approximately 175 feet, I think fits well within the character of what's surrounding us. If you look to the right of us, you'll see there's a 12-story mixed-use building. We're proposing to be 15 stories. You can see across the street from us, next to the Blinds to Go building that you all know, I'm sure you're familiar with, is a 22-story building under construction right now. And I'll show you more images in a second to show you even taller buildings all around, buildings that you're familiar with. Park Towers, which is 20 stories. The Drake, which is 15 stories. These are all taller buildings. Thank you. You read my mind, Austin. You can see here I've created this slide. The purpose of creating this slide is not to show you how tall we're going to be, but rather to show you that our proposed height fits within what's going on around us. You have buildings that are as tall as 227 feet, 20 stories on the side streets over by the Long Island Expressway. And as you move closer to us, you have a 274-foot tall building under construction. Behind us, you have a 249-foot tall building. So the building that we're asking for, I think fits squarely within the character, and it's going to provide union jobs, and it's going to provide affordable housing, and it's being built by a local developer, Rudy and Michael Abramov, born and raised in the neighborhood on Queens Boulevard. Michael is at least the younger of the two, and they're a family-owned enterprise who's committed to your community. So you can ask for a more communicative, cooperative, local, hands-on developer. Next slide, please. This slide starts to show you a little bit about what I was just speaking about the height of the buildings that are around us. And this just gives you imagery. It shows you all the buildings I just spoke about. 30 stories tall, 12 stories tall, 12 stories tall, 273 feet tall across the street, 153 feet tall, 23 stories, 298 feet tall. We're asking for a building that is 145 feet tall. I dare say that it fits squarely. 174 feet, I was dyslexic. I dare say fits squarely within the heights of the surrounding buildings. Next slide, please. And we're providing affordable housing, which there is none of. Not to beat the dead horse, but I'll take one more stab at it to call out the heights of the buildings up and down Queens Boulevard. Queens Boulevard is arguably the widest, most grandest boulevard in the city of New York. And it has, in my opinion, the lowest level of development, and we're squandering it. If you look up and down the screen, you'll see one-story developments along the boulevard with taller, larger buildings down the side street. It's the exact opposite of good planning. The planning calls for the taller buildings on the avenues, near the transit, This is what we are proposing. You see our site squarely in a great position to take advantage of the subway station that's 2 blocks away, and the bus stop, and the fact that we are an island unto ourselves, 22,000 square feet of lot area, and no residential on our block. We're a sole block to ourselves. Next slide, please. We were asked when we met with you in January of 2021. January of 2020. I can't keep track of the years anymore with everything that's been going on. We were asked when I believe it was in January of 2021, we had a Zoom meeting, and people said to us, hey, you got to keep the configuration of the Tower Diner. We like its heritage. We like its history. And that was what you spoke about at the beginning. And there's been landmark discussions about the location for years. The reality is it doesn't have the landmark historical integrity needed to qualify it for a landmark. However, having said that, we seek to be communicative of the history of the site. The site is famous for being the Trilon site, which is the Trilon movie theater that opened in the 20s. It had a beautiful orchestra with space within inside of it. It had vaudeville acts performed within it. It closed in 1999. We're seeking to call the building the Trilon building. In addition to calling it the Trilon building, the Tower Diner, which is on their own relocating and been offered a spot to come back into should they desire, on very good relations with them. We've replicated the tower of the diner in the design of the building. You can see the glass design. And if you poke down just at the corner and the proposed design and the rendering, you'll see a clock. And the clock is, of course, meant to mimic and harken back to the old Tower Diner. Next slide, please. This slide shows you what I was speaking to before. I understand that a lot of people that are on this call may be comfortably situated in their homes right now, as I am. And I understand that rent burdens may not be extreme for everybody, but we are trying our best to provide, without any government money, to provide transit-rich development that is affordable. And by doing that, we're voluntarily providing 44 units of affordable housing. And if we've taken a survey of the 3 projects, of any project actually, that we could find, and these are the 3 we could find, which I don't think is close to this development at all, one of which on the far right is one that your board approved and we worked very hard on, which is the Parkway Hospital. And that's a phenomenal project that's coming to fruition right now. The other 2 are being constructed right now. So the reality is none of them have actually been built yet. Nobody is living in any affordable housing constructed under mandatory inclusionary housing since it's been created nearly a decade ago. And this will be the 4th one. And you have 2 developers in front of you, father and son, that are committed to going in the ground immediately. They're anxious to create the housing. Next slide, please. The next few slides, this slide actually just gives you a little bit more information about who you're partnering with when you work with us. In addition to the Abramoffs that I mentioned a moment ago, we are working towards a good faith agreement. It's not signed yet, but we are working towards it with 32BJ. We are not signed yet with that. We're working towards it, but we believe we will come to an agreement. We are also working with a trusted not-for-profit developer, affordable administrator, which is named Fifth Avenue Committee. To those of you who do not know the Fifth Avenue Committee, which is probably a lot of people on this call, the Fifth Avenue Committee refers to Fifth Avenue in Brooklyn, in Park Slope. That was where they were, quote unquote, born. They've since expanded to become one of the most well-respected affordable housing providers in New York City. And Jay Marcus should be on the call with us today, and he's happy to speak to you. And also on the phone with us is Alvin Shine. Alvin Shine is with the firm Sidon and Shine. Alvin will be creating the regulatory agreement that will bind the affordable housing in perpetuity at no cost to the city of New York under the expense and burden of the Abramoff family or whoever develops the property, but it will be them. But anybody who develops it, not just them, is obligated to provide it, is my point. And they will be doing that under a regulatory agreement that they will be entering into with the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. So I'm trying to confirm for everybody on this call, not just our word of what we're doing here, but we are bringing others into the mix. and we're hoping that they could explain and help affirm for you what is going on other than HPD. They are not a party to this application. We will be making the regulatory agreement with them. Next slide, please. This slide just shows you the zoning district. It's hard to read, so I'll have a better one, but I wanted to show you the map. Next slide. I have a better map to show you in a second. I'll skip through these slides rather quickly. You all know the property. Austin, keep clicking. It's one story. You know it very, very well. Keep clicking, get right past the photos. Actually, go back to 2 shots, please, Austin. One more slide back. This slide is helpful. View 20 in the right-hand corner. That shows you the 12 or 13, I count 13 stories on the brick building behind Mount Sinai. That's directly across the street from us. What I'm trying to depict here is we're requesting a 15-story building. Now, albeit our building is taller than that building, but the point is that the neighborhood is not is no slouch when it comes to taller buildings. And the R71 zoning that's in place itself would allow a very tall building on the site, albeit we do not want to create that. Next slide to the zoning map, please, Austin. Let's pause here for a second. This is an enlarged version of the map, the city's map that I showed you a moment ago that I said we'll skip to a better version. The left side shows you the existing zoning of the site. The right side shows you the site highlighted with the little dots around it, showing you going to R8X. You can see it's an R71 surrounding us, and it's an R8X where we are proposing. Next slide, please. This just shows you a sectional, a map of it with the tax map, so you can see what that looks like, but it's very straightforward. Next slide, please, Austin. Let me give you some more visuals here just to orient you on how the R8X looks with the remainder of the block. Next slide. And if you can go now, Austin, to the AMIs. Pause here. So the proposal is to provide 30% of the floor area at an affordable average rent, 80% of the area median income. So Alvin Shine is on the call with us, and he'll go through this in a moment and be able to answer any questions when we're done. But the basic gist of it is very clearly laid out here. When we sat with your board last time, you said that you don't want to see any studios. So we eliminated all of the studios. You can see there, no studios are proposed. The left side shows you that. It also shows you the breakdown of units as you go down. You can see a 1-bedroom, there'll be 89 market rate, 27 affordable. And you can see they'll be available at different income bands. There'll be approximately 70% of the AMI, 80% of the AMI, 90% of the AMI. And those bands average 80%. So you can see a 1-bedroom will go at 70% for $1,500, a 2-bedroom will be $1,800, and a 3-bedroom will be $2,000. Clearly affordable to a young family that's growing, where everybody is employed and working, but definitely can't afford a $4,000 or $5,000 a month apartment, which is what the market is calling for on the larger apartments. So it pretty much is cutting the rent in half. Next slide, please. We're showing you here the renderings and more imagery of the building. We wanted to show you clearly some of the changes we made to the ground floor that was in response to your request at the last meeting. In addition to redesigning and making the building, we think, a very prominent building that takes great advantage of the shape, its location in the community. We've also rearranged the entrance to the parking garage and lobby at your request. And I'll show you that in a moment. Next slide, please. You can see an imagery here that shows you more of a view of the property from 99th Street. We're showing you here that you have in the top left, you can see the clock that I was speaking about a minute ago in a little more detail. You could see that in the middle of it, where the numbers 98, 97 are, is where the entrance is proposed to be into a portion of the building, but not the main entrance. It's really the service and more of the commercial area. You can see the car entrance is right there. I'll show you a slide in a second. It'll show you the floor plan and show you where the lobby entrance is. Next slide, please, Austin. Here you can see the view of the property from 66th, and here that's showing you where the entrance to the lobby is. And as you had requested, the entrance to the lobby is separated from the entrance to the garage. So when somebody's coming in after a long day's work and they're walking into the property, and if they've taken advantage of the phenomenal mass transit in the area, they could walk into the property on 66th and they will not see a car crossing the sidewalk anywhere around them. That was one of the big concerns that you had at the community at the last board meeting we had last year. Next slide, please. Now I'm just going to walk you through the plans. It's just nothing too crazy to show you here. This is, thank you, can pause right there. This is the first floor plan. So this is orienting you exactly as we just spoke a moment ago. The right side, you could see you've got the garage ramp there, and then next to that, you've got the loading dock, the service entrance there, you know, where they'll get whatever goods or whatever they need to get into there, but it's not meant to be used that routinely. Really, the garage ramp is the only active area. It will be self-park for 45 cars, self-park. And so there'll be no backup onto the ramp. Nobody's waiting for anybody to come in or get in or out. The ramp is wide enough to accommodate more than enough cars. The parking lot is on the second floor, so people can move in and out freely. The residential lobby, you can see, is on 66th Avenue, and you can see that that's, of course, as I just called out a moment ago, separated. Next, you can see here the retail space, by the way, at the first floor. That's all there. We will call out from, if it should have come up later in the discussion, one of those retail spaces has been earmarked for the congregation that you may have heard about, and I'll let Michael and if people speak on that, I'll let Michael address that, Michael Abramov. But that one of those retail spaces has been in good faith held for the congregation for a 99-year lease on very favorable terms. And you know, let Michael speak to that later. So it says retail space now, but that is clearly the intent of the owner, is for that to be, if the congregation wanted to act on that, to take advantage of that space. Next slide, please. This is just the mezzanine level. Next slide, up to the second floor at the parking, excuse me. This starts to show you how the building lays out. You can see that the lower floors are where the parking garage is, and the commercial, the building starts to set back as it goes up. It takes advantage of its triangular shape, and they've really created a special design that you can see in the renderings you saw. The black and white imagery doesn't do it as much justice, but this starts to give you an idea of how many setbacks there are and at what heights they are, so that you can see that the building doesn't appear cumbersome or bulky to the look. And I would even suggest that in comparison to the as of right R71 building that is governed by what's called a sky exposure plane, which means there is no maximum height limit, I would suggest that this building is a much sharper looking building and actually looks less intrusive than that building would. Next slide, please. Just gives you another view of the building. Again, you can see the tasteful design and more geometric format. Next slide, please. You're almost at the end of it. This is it again. And Austin, if you click to next slide, there you go, this one. Okay, so the slide we're finishing with is just to emphasize the discussion that we had at your last meeting, which was the redesign of the ground floor to move the parking area entrance away from the residential lobby and to create more of a safety, traffic safety, a safe traffic environment by doing so. And that's what we've done here. So vehicles entering the property can do so by, if they're coming from Queens Boulevard, they can just make a series of rights. They can pretend like they're in New Jersey, just keep making right turns, and they can make a right turn on 66th and then a right turn on 99th and right in. And when they leave the property, again, make a right turn and they go on their way. So we believe we've created the most safe traffic plan we can. We've tried to move the cars away from the intersection, away from the corners, tried to put it as dead center as we can, given the fact that we also have a building core that we have to build. So that concludes our, Austin, you can pull the screen down. That concludes our presentation. We have our entire team here. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have about anything. So thank you very much for giving us the time tonight.
Thanks, Eric, for the super thorough presentation. Really appreciate it. Why don't I kick off the Q&A part with some of the top questions we've already been discussing via email over the past few months, and then after that, we can open it up to the committee members. So the first question I have, and we've talked about this before, is do you have an update on what's happening with the synagogue and its members?
That I would, Michael, if you're on the call, why don't you jump right in because you've been talking to the rabbi okay.
Hello, guys
And women.
and women. Sorry. So, in one of the slides, Eric, you didn't touch upon it, but it was a comparison between the old plans and the new plans. Excuse me. If you take a look at the new plans, we actually had one of the retail spaces reconfigured for a synagogue and labeled as synagogue. If Austin can go back to that slide. Yep, perfect. So we've allocated close to 7,500 to 8,000 square feet between first and basement space for a synagogue. We did speak to the synagogue, Ornathan, and they are currently relocating to the 99-cent discount store across the street. We will continue to have an open dialogue with them, but whether it be them or whether it be another synagogue, we are unsure, but we do have intentions of keeping this space open for a synagogue.
Great, thank you, Michael. The next question I have is, it's around the demolition. Do you have a schedule for demolishing the existing buildings and clearing the site?
Yes, we do. We are currently, we've submitted and we've gone back and forth with the proper governmental authorities. We intend to start sometime next month with about a 30 to 45 day time for completion.
Now,
thank you.
If I could just clarify on that so everybody on the call understands what's happening and why Michael is filing for demolition permit. Not doing it with the presumption that you're going to approve it. He's doing it because he's taking a risk. Because the only way in New York City to build affordable housing on the backs of a private developer is to do something using the 421A or quote unquote affordable New York program. That program is up for expiration in June of this year, or July. If a developer does not have certain conditions met in time, they don't get the tax break that could help support the creation of the affordable housing. That puts higher development at risk. So what Michael is doing right now is not being presumptuous that you're going to approve it, so he's demolishing it so he could start. If 421A was not expiring in June and he wasn't up against the back end deadline, he wouldn't be doing a thing right now. But because it is expiring, and because the only way to create affordable housing that's of no cost to the government is to utilize what every developer in the city utilizes, the 421 program. It's the backbone of development in New York City. Without that, he can't build it. So should this not be approved, should somebody look at this and say, we're not approving this, Michael's not rushing to demolish this to gain anything in the tax break. And should it not be approved, well, then he's got a big problem on his hands. He has a demolished building and he doesn't know how he can make the economics work under the R71. So that's why he's demolishing it. He's taking a chance. He's been working at this development for years. The 421A expiring crept up on him. I know he's been trying with the rabbi for a long time to find a common ground. And we encourage you to get involved and help us. We want the rabbi to stay. We would love for the rabbi to stay. And we will grant him favorable lease terms and favorable lease lengths. Help him relocate in the interim. The best we can.
Eric, assuming the approval for the rezoning does not go through, what would the as of right development look like?
You don't have that sketched out.
Sorry, Michael just muted you for the siren.
I didn't hear Eric's response or the question. I'm sorry.
The question was, how big was the R71 that you're able to get? And I said, I don't have a plan for it, but you've worked it out. How many stories do you think you can develop?
So it was said earlier that under the R71 and on the footprint of the lot size that we have, under the sky exposure plan, we were actually going to do between 14 and 16 floors. Just the tower portion would be slimmer. So it would be a slim, tall building.
Michael, repeat that?
Eric, we missed your question. You cut out for a bit. What was your question?
Yeah, maybe that was my phone. Michael, I just couldn't hear Michael. I apologize.
Yeah,
Michael,
we heard Michael. He said a tall, skinny tower somewhere around the 15, 16 story range. Is that what you said, Michael?
Between
Yeah.
14 and 16.
14 and 16.
All right. So it's good. I didn't hear him because that was what I said earlier too. And that's what can be built. R71 for everybody on the phone who's familiar with zoning and who's not. There's two different kinds of zoning districts you could have. You could have a contextual district, which puts an absolute height limit, or you could have a non-contextual district that works on sky exposure. So, for example, North Shore Towers is built on a sky exposure plane. It's an R3 district. It's meant for residential small homes. The reason they built it so big is because they put the golf course around it. By putting the golf course around it, it made the big piece. They were able to go up tall. It's the same concept here. Because this lot is exceptionally large, because it's in its own island, it's able to go up tall and slender. So that's the idea.
Eric, let me just jump in a moment. I want to just clarify the point that if the project goes ahead without the rezoning on an as-of-right basis, the Abramos are not compelled to provide any affordable housing. It can be an entirely market rate project.
Yes, that's true. Yep.
So
thanks, Alvin.
There's, I think, a significant advantage to the rezoning in terms of the neighborhood, in that you will have 30% affordable at very affordable rents. I think one of the things we discussed with the Abramos was not just having an 80% AMI band, which is kind of restrictive, because what you're talking about is if you earn with 1 or 2 points less than 80% of AMI, you don't qualify. And if you're over 80% AMI, you don't qualify either. So it's a very narrow band. But what we came up with was a swath of affordability from 70 to 90%, so that a lot of people in the affordable range would be able to qualify and not get bumped because they missed by a couple of points.
Thanks for the clarification, Alvin. One last question before I open it up. We have a lot of interest in installing a stop sign at the intersection of 99th and 66th. We've actually requested it to DOT back in 2019. This is something we should keep talking about. Would love to get your help to keep pushing for that stop sign in that area.
With the right crew. So Andrew Villari is on the phone. Andrew happens to be one. He's got a team of very bright, traffic-oriented people. He's a traffic consultant. Andrew, can you just say hello, introduce yourself, and then express what maybe you could reach out on behalf of? That would be good for us, because anything that harms traffic is good for us, because we're going to have families living here. So, Andrew, could you help out with reaching out to DOT?
Yeah, no problem.
And we can get with them about.
No problem at all. And just so I understand, right now there's a stop sign on 66 as it approaches 99th. Are you looking for stop signs on 99th in both directions, or just one way?
Yeah, I think we would want an all-way stop sign there.
And painted crosswalks as well.
Right, because there's only crosswalks across, I guess, when you're walking along 99th. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, we're more than happy to reach out to DOT and try to connect some dots here.
Great, sounds good. Cool. So those are all of the questions that I had. I'm going to open it up now to our committee members. Let's use the raise hand function to make it a little orderly. Who has any thoughts or questions they'd like to share?
I just want to remind everyone that we have a hard stop at 7:30, so we can accommodate all the public comments that have been submitted. So please leave your comments very brief, and to the people answering the questions, please make your answers very streamlined. Thank you so much.
All right, Peter, I saw yours first. Why don't we start with you?
Actually, John was up before me.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Okay, well, thank you, Peter. First, I just wanted to, commend the quality of the presentation and your past willingness to listen to what the committee has been raising as issues and concerns, and I raised my questions in that context. I'm a little confused, really, when you were discussing the 421's expiration and the whole need to demolish. I mean, the fact of the matter is that this proposal is not going to be either approved or disapproved until the matter gets to the city council, which, unlike this board, has the authority to disapprove of this proposal. And my concern is that by going ahead by relocating items out of it, and I know some like Trilon Liquor have already left, and demolishing it by the time it gets to the city council. It's the fear of really providing some sort of a fait accompli, where the council is presented with a position, even though there may be real concerns and objections to the matter, of either dealing and saying yes or dealing with a vacant lot. And so I really don't know how, and again, since they're the ones who really have the authority to approve or really kill the proposal, I'm wondering how that concerns and why it would not be a sign of maybe good faith on your part to basically not demolish the site until the Euler proposal has reached its conclusion. And I leave that. That's what
I'd answer that question if you don't mind.
Yeah, you do, Albert.
The issue is that the developer is taking a chance. They're hoping that the rezoning will occur. And on that basis, they need to qualify under 421A before the deadline. If they do nothing and wait for the zoning to be approved next 7 months hence or wherever that will be, it will be too late to then demolish and qualify. So it would be entirely an academic exercise because 421A is not renewed, and there's a good possibility that it won't. Last time around, there was a 1-year gap before something came back. We don't know what's going to happen going forward. So prudent thing to do is to, and you're not building anything really, you're just clearing the site and just starting the foundation. That's
well, I'm just saying, I mean, it's not like you're doing nothing. You're submitting a Euler proposal. You're making a proposal to build something. That's not nothing. And does that require you to demolish the property? I mean, as I say, I don't think these things analytically mesh and work together. And I think the key issue is that you've made the proposal.
Well,
that's a live thing.
Proposals for vacant lots.
I'll answer for a second.
You can get vacant lots.
But
in this case, let me just finish the thought and then, okay. They're not going forward with development. They do have to clear the site and start something. That is, if they don't do that, then this may be a meaningless exercise. If they get approved, there is no more 421A, they can't build. So, and they are not, it's not a fait accompli. You have a vacant site. There are many vacant sites that apply for zoning changes. So they're not getting a new building permit. They can't go ahead until the matter is done.
Right. And Johnny, it's Eric Palatnik. So that was Alvin Shine. He's representing the owners in the 421A application and created the affordability metrics. John, I appreciate, we appreciate the compliment and the vein, the spirit in which you brought your comment. And because you said it like that, I'm going to tell you the same thing. We're not demolishing the building in the spirit of pressuring anybody. So the same way you made your critical comment trying to say that, hey, I'm not trying to sabotage you, and I'm able to understand the difference. There's a Supreme Court saying even a dog knows the difference between tripped and being kicked. So here, we're not demolishing the building to pressure anybody. We know we're taking a risk, but the program has a reality with an expiration deadline. And the timing of COVID, the way it worked out and the way it pushed everything around a little bit timing-wise, pushed us up against this deadline, right up against the deadline. As a matter of fact, I almost keeled over at the start of the call when I heard that you're not voting until December, because that pushes our project back in the next step of the cycle another month between all the other hearings. So I was going to beg of your board, if you could make a decision this month, it would really help Michael out to try to make his deadline for the 421. But that's what we're up against, that kind of race against the statutory deadline. And it's not meant to pressure anybody. And we leave it up to you and the board members to distinguish our intent there as being good and why we're doing it, and not to tell anybody anything otherwise. If we were doing it for a bad reason to pressure somebody, we would have demolished that building 2 years ago.
Yeah,
John, just in the interest of keeping this moving along, we have a few other people with their hands raised, so why don't we keep moving?
Yeah, the 421 was delayed basically because one house of the state legislature was controlled by one party. The other one was controlled by another party, which A, is not in control anymore, B, and was the
John, why don't we move on to the next few questions?
Okay,
We only
I will
have
stop
14
it at
minutes
that, but I
left.
just wanted to raise
Thank you.
that point.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we have Peter, then David, then Herb. Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Pramit, and thank you, Eric and Alvin and everybody for the presentation. Yeah, I very much appreciate you pointing out the lack of affordable housing developments in this area. It's something that the board is taking seriously, and it's something that I think I remember correctly, that we've actually pushed this development as well to try and find even deeper affordability. In the Shalimar site and the Woodhaven site that was on your map, we were able to secure commitments from both of those developers, which we'll see. Hopefully they will come to fruition, but of including a 60% AMI band. And I wonder if those numbers have been crunched and if there's a possibility for us to reach that level of affordable housing.
Yes,
Thank
and I know exactly what you're talking about because we worked on Parkway together, right? In Parkway, we had a 60% AMI in there. Parkway, we were trying to get a senior population. We were really trying to target at the time, and that was the reason for that. This, we're targeting a different population. This, we're targeting, pretty much young families that are trying to get a foothold, that can't afford to live in Forest Hills Gardens. So to answer your question, we did crunch the numbers 6 ways from Sunday, and I begged Michael to come in at 60%. Tremendously, because I anticipated this question. Michael could tell you that he ran the numbers over and over and over again, and it doesn't work at 80, at anything other than 80. Now, what he did also do is he went with Alvin, and they tried to figure out what the area rents were to try to see if they match up with the area rents. And it turns out that even at the 80, which, if you look at it, it's not 60, obviously, but it's still a heck of a lot cheaper than the market. So it's certainly affordable. It's not a rub. It's not a just saying it's affordable when it's not. They certainly are less, but they're not deep affordable. And I'll let Michael answer if you want to go a little bit further on that conversation why it's not. But we did try.
Just so I'd like to point out the other 2 sites that were mentioned. One is being Parkway, which my family and there's a group of us that purchased that property earlier this year. And why that property seems to work is that with the heirs component, there was a certain floor area bump that helped bridge the gap between 60% AMI and 30% and 80% AMI. And the other site, which is the former diner on 63rd, that site is on the market in contract, ready to sell to another group, not one that did rezoning. In this instance, this is going to be a property that we want to build very high quality for long-term stability. And in order to do that, there's a certain cost allocated. And as much as we've tried with Alvin and with Eric to run it at 60%, it really didn't pencil out. And we know that 80% we can commit to it and still provide the same quality of development and not having to spare certain things just to make it 60%. That summarizes it all.
David, let's go to you next.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. My concern is a traffic study for that area. I don't know if the board would do the request or the developer. There is a triangle right in the middle of 99th Street. There's going to be a lot of congestion and more people. My concern is more than a stop sign, but a traffic study. Would the board do that? Can we make the request for that?
I think our transportation committee could probably make that request. Whether or not it would happen anytime soon is a different question.
We can give a letter to DOT on that.
Yeah.
And we will, in
also
parallel
wanted
to
to
this,
circle
we will.
back. Yeah, and we can
The
also
other-
circle back to DCP and see, I think Haek Young is on the line, if that's something that's done, or we can do it through DCP. I'm not sure.
I'll tell you this, we have our traffic consultants on the phone, and as I said earlier, Michael and his family are committed locally to what they're doing, and this site is very important to them, and anything you did with traffic would be beneficial to them. So I'm sure if you had an ask right now for Andrew Villari, he's on the phone. Andrew, could you maybe just speak up a little bit and tell everybody who you are, and maybe, because I'm hearing a lot of concerns about the traffic conditions and a stop sign, maybe you could just give 2 minutes of what you might be able to get involved with and help out a little.
Absolutely, yeah. So my name is Andrew Valeri. I'm a professional traffic engineer with Stonefield Engineering. We have an office here in the city. So regarding the traffic impact of this project, we have done a traffic study. And whenever you do a rezoning application, you have to think about the net increment over what you can do as of right. And the city sets forth different thresholds for what qualifies as a major traffic impact. And this application is proposing, just looking at commercial space, there would be less commercial space in the future than there presently is here. And then we are adding residential, or asking the city to approve that. But the benefit of this location is what Eric said in his introduction, is where we're located with proximity to transit, right on Queens Boulevard, great access to the subway. So we are providing off-street parking, 45 parking spaces. It's not intended that this is going to be a massive vehicle traffic area. And again, we're talking about the net increase in what currently happens today, and we're reducing the amount of commercial space.
Yeah, but I think, Andrew, they're speaking about the future, not just our building, but what's going on there. So I think that what they're asking, I'm suggesting, is that maybe we could work with them, because it's in Michael's best interest, to work towards the stop sign and to help supply traffic data that you could provide to help support that.
Absolutely.
As we've said for the last couple of years, Michael and his father, they're making a life out of building on Queens Boulevard and in Queens and in your neighborhood. And they'd like to create good quality projects that includes not only the product, not only the affordability level and the union work, but the exterior of the building, its facade, and also the street experience, which of course includes sidewalks and traffic. So everything up in
Finally, my last question, I'm concerned also about the affordability of the apartments. At 70%, 1,500 for a one bedroom, that would mean 30% of your rent going to income. That's 4,500 a month of monthly income. So I'm concerned about the affordability and the lack of studios. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, David. Let's do Herb, and then I see Mark's hand, and that might be it, and we'll have to go to public comments after.
But I just have a quick question about the building, identifying the building. You say the tri-line, but also we need to know the address of the building. And I saw on the plans it's 9881 Queens Boulevard. Saw on the building it was 9895 Queens Boulevard. And I also saw that there was no entrance on Queens Boulevard. Given those three issues, what is the address, and how will people identify the building if the entrance is not on Queens Boulevard?
It's 2021, so we have different pronouns now for everything. That's
just to give us a simplified answer.
Yeah.
Those are all placeholders. We are not working with our expediter to go and get future house numbers, and it'll be whatever the DOB issues us. It'll be a 66th Avenue address.
Okay.
It's not at our leisure to decide.
We didn't mean to confuse you by having three different.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Mark, let's go to you. Mark, you might be on mute if you're speaking.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good.
Right now.
So yeah, I was saying thanks, Eric, for the presentation and your whole team. Thank you very much, and thanks for following up on some of the things we said. So I'm just reacting to you refer a number of times as us being transit rich. It is true we're transit rich. However, we're also very transit over occupied. I mean, even though the subways are right there, the buses are right, and I know COVID affected that, but we have to assume that it's going to be sooner or later returning. And I guess, I don't know if the developer can do about it, but again, even though we're transit rich, it's still we're transit overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, you have a lot of cars and vehicles on the street there. We've all.
But again, not only that, you have people taking the subways and taking buses. So it's not only the cars, it's also filling up the transit itself.
Yeah, well, we can't help that. We'd have to close the gates to New York City, but we can say that,
You'll have bike parking?
Excuse me?
Bike parking?
Yes, there will be bike parking. There'll be bike parking under the rules, and actually, we're going to be speaking with some other bike operators that might have some bike parking on site. They're doing some innovative things. There's a group out there that's doing some really cool stuff. Then we're speaking with them. So bike parking, and to both of your points, you know, the younger generation are utilizing bicycles, they are utilizing mass transit, they are more pedestrian and Uber, Lyft friendly than it was in past years. So the location, you know, the transit rich component of it is attractive to somebody that's, you know, eager to hop on a train or grab a lift or a bus or something. So
I just want to add a comment to that. Per DOB, we're required to have X amount of bike spots per dwelling unit. There's also this new wave of electric scooters that everyone's riding around in. We're also going to be allocating space within the building for those electric scooters.
Great. I am not seeing any other hands right now, and we still have about 2 minutes before we officially start the public hearing. So, Eric, given all the questions the board has had, anything else you want to sort of add to you know, some of the feedback that you've received so far?
No, other than I'm thankful that you're all engaging us in an intellectual conversation about it, and I do feel passionately that Queens Boulevard can do better, and I think that if we work together with developers and you to create a plan that everybody could live with, I think you'll see great homes pop up against the boulevard for the next decade. So, thank you for entertaining the idea. We greatly appreciate it.
Great. Alexa, we are ahead of schedule, so do we need to just kill time for 2 minutes, or can we get started with the public testimony a little bit early?
We can probably get started. I'll just say that this is the conclusion of the committee meeting, and this is the beginning of the public comment period and the public hearing. So I'll just orient people. So this is the public hearing of the Queens Community Board comments regarding 9881 Queens Boulevard. We published the meeting notice with a request for public comments. We've had a number of them come in via the board. People had the opportunity to either submit written comments, which will be read, or sign up to speak themselves. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. And if you're watching it on YouTube, hello. And if you're watching it as an attendee and you've signed up to speak, you will be promoted and have the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes. And you're being timed, and we're going to be very rigid about our 2-minute time limit. You will not have a warning. You will just be muted at the 2-minute period. And finally, if you are watching this after, like on tomorrow or whenever on YouTube, and you want to contact the board, we're always open to hearing from you. And if there are comments about this particular development, we can forward them afterwards to our committee members. And we do have a board meeting next week, which also has a public hearing and a general public comment period. So you're always welcome to come comment about this or anything community related. So with that, first we will do written public comments. Prameet, the chair
Awesome.
of the committee, will read those out loud.
Yeah, and I actually just put the language in various PowerPoint slides as well, so you can read along. So most of them are short. Yes. Most of them are short, so they should be under 2 minutes. Some are longer, so Mark, definitely time me for those longer ones. And again, 2 minutes per comment. So number 1, I am writing this letter to voice a strong opposition to the rezoning of the Trilon property. This landlord can build 7-floor tower as of right, but this is not enough for him. He wants to overdevelop and change fully the character of the neighborhood while stepping and destroying a functioning house of worship and many businesses. We can't allow this to happen. Please support the community and say no. On behalf of 12 families, Tasila and Peter Levi. Number 2, we, the undersigned, would like to ask the members of Community Board 6 to deny the application to allow a developer to build a high-rise and demolish a functioning synagogue and many businesses around the property. Hopefully, he's not going to have a free pass by you, and someone will stop this overdevelopment in our neighborhood. Most respectfully, the Suyunov, Nektov, Suleimanov, and Davidov families. Number 3, I am a resident of Forest Hills, and I am writing out of concern of the news that the Tower Diner and Trilon Theater are planned for demolition for the development of a large residential building. These structures are historically significant and have great sentimental value to the people of Forest Hills. Our neighborhood would be losing a wonderful block that has been frequented by locals for generations for another heartless and huge glass residential tower. Thank you, Jackie Lavin. Number 4, and there's 15 of these, FYI. Number 4, my family, neighbors, and I are opposed to demolishing the beautiful Ornaton Synagogue and Community Center and Tower Diner. I learned that the synagogue was once the Trilon Theater, an Art Deco building celebrating the 1939 to 1940 World's Fair. We must not destroy what makes my community special, and it is wrong to tear down a synagogue. I am also against overdeveloping our neighborhood. Please do everything that you can to help us. Thank you, Noam Reuven Becken. Number 5, I'm writing to submit testimony via email to Community Board 6 regarding the proposed demolition of the Trilon Theater and the Tower Diner. I oppose this demolition and the proposed new development of the area and the airspace and sky above it. I have signed a petition to this effect as well. Please do not cement the sky above us and brick up one of the last few remaining open spaces we have. All to put up one more development for one more developer. Here's a link about the Trilon Theater, link. In addition to the airspace, the fresh air, the sky that we in the community will lose, we will also lose yet more of the barely remaining architectural gems we have left. Please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you, William Bill Zengel, Forest Hills, New York. Number 6, this is a long one, so Mark, time me here. The real estate development company RJ Capital Holding has filed a land use application to demolish an entire block of 1- and 2-story commercial structures and replace them with a 15-story glass mixed-use residential and commercial building. One of the buildings that currently occupies this block is the Tower Diner. This colonial-style building's distinctive architectural details include a clock tower, columns, and a slate roof. In 1993, when the building which houses the diner was converted from a bank to a diner, the diner's owners took great care to preserve it. They obviously understood and appreciated the value of this architectural gem and its significance to our community. Another building on this block is an Art Deco style structure, which formerly housed the Trilon movie theater and which currently houses the Ornaton Synagogue. If it is demolished, members of that synagogue will lose their place of worship, and the community as a whole will lose an architecturally significant building. If this proposed development is approved, it will place an additional strain on the infrastructure of our community. Currently, Long Island Jewish Forest Hills is the only hospital that is located in Forest Hills, and there are no hospitals located in the surrounding communities of Rego Park and Kew Gardens. Common sense dictates that we cannot continue to construct new housing unless an additional hospital opens in our community. Congestion also has a negative impact on other aspects of our neighborhood's infrastructure, including our schools, traffic and parking, public transportation, and our sewer and drainage system. Preserving the Tower Diner and Ornaton Trilon block would have a lasting positive impact upon our beloved Forest Hills community. I respectfully ask that you vote against its proposed demolition and honor the wishes of more than 3,400 people who have thus far signed a petition to preserve this cherished block. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Sincerely, Regina J. Fags. Wow, I'm surprised that one was under 2 minutes.
Yeah, you hit 2 minutes.
Great. Number 7. These are 2 iconic historic structures in the borough of Queens, and their architectural integrity needs to be preserved. It would be a travesty to destroy them and be replaced with another bland, nondescript piece of architectural ugliness. The proposed replacement would only enhance the congestion and parking issues that already exist in that area. Please save these architectural icons from demolition. Thank you. Sincerely, Richard M. Delaney, Cary, North Carolina. Cary, NC. Number 8, another long one. When I drive west along Queens Boulevard headed home, I pass one high-rise after another, one boxy store after another. No discernible landmarks, nothing of interest. Suddenly, a small white tower asserts itself upward into the skyline, and I know that I am almost home. The Tower Diner rears its lovely white clock tower above the fray, and I know that I am in the Forest Hills that I dearly love. Not only does the silhouette of this Tower Diner beckon me home, it also beckons me inside with its homey array of breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. My home is just a short walk from the diner, and many a time my son and I have walked those 2 short blocks to share a meal together. The tower has stood the test of time, survived the pandemic, offered meals small and large, and has allowed us to be served by such neighborhood favorites as Olga and Hercules. It is a home away from home, a place to eat an almost home-cooked meal in a quiet setting. The tower makes my corner of Forest Hills unique. It provides jobs. It provides an affordable place to eat. It allows me to walk to a place where I can get a good meal in the confines of my neighborhood. If the tower were destroyed, the character of the neighborhood would go with it. Queens Boulevard would look like any city USA, any ugly city USA. Apartment buildings are being built elsewhere on Queens Boulevard. They will provide housing for new residents, but where will these residents eat a quiet, affordable meal? What will those residents see when they look out their windows or drive down the boulevard? I want to preserve the Tower Diner in order to preserve the heart of Forest Hills, in order to keep it a unique place. Build apartment buildings elsewhere. Raise ugly square buildings. Do not destroy this beautiful building. Thank you, Joanne Davis. Number 9, to whom it may concern at CB6. I would like to share my thoughts about the proposed destruction/construction project for the block of the Tower Diner on Queens Boulevard. I cannot attend your CB meeting on Wednesday, November 3rd, so please take these words into consideration and share them at the meeting if you can. I have lived on 99th Street between 66th Avenue and 66th Road for over 40 years. I have seen many changes in this neighborhood, some worse than others, but this proposed change is not just disturbing, it is devastating. First, I heard an 8-story building was proposed, then I read it's more than twice that height. It will block all the sunlight on 99th Street, and such a building will not blend in with the architecture and feel of this area. I saw the plans. It may be modern, but it is not aesthetically pleasing. What's worse, no accommodations are in place to preserve whatever is of historic, architectural, or social value on that block. The Tower Diner, as an eatery, has been important to this area for nearly 30 years. As a building, it is historic and has been important for many more decades. It is a neighborhood landmark in much the same way that Ridgewood Bank is in Forest Hills. The same can be said about the Trilon Theater, now Ornaton. Its marquee and front are historic to Rego Park. Maybe you can save portions of that synagogue, maybe not, but the new landlord could certainly save the entire tower building. It is a separate entity. Just look at what they did on Queens Boulevard across from the Midway Theater. They did not destroy the bottom of the block when they built above and behind it. Thank you for your consideration of my concerns. The distress this is causing to myself and my neighbors is substantial, and it should not be ignored. Sincerely, Carol D. Haggerty. Number 10, almost there. Esteemed Community Board 6 members, it is with extreme urgency and consternation that I am addressing you in regards to the proposed demolition of our beloved landmarks, the Ornaton Synagogue, the Trilon Theater, and the classic Tower Diner. By granting permission to the contractors, it is akin to killing off the shared memories amongst those who inhabit our unique and cherished neighborhood. It would be like ripping apart the cultural fabric we all share, that which brings us together as a community. The tangible reminders that reflect our history inhabit these landmarks' presence as a testament to that which has preceded us. Something fine instead of another cookie-cutter condo that sprawls along a lifeless shell. We beseech you to not cut out the heart of our community. Please let's rally to keep alive that which provides balm to the soul and unites us. Most sincerely yours, Anna Rose. Number 11, Dear Community Board 6, our community strongly wishes to preserve the Art Deco style Trilon Theater 1939 World's Fair that is now the very important Ornaton Synagogue. We would also like to preserve Tower Diner. We are opposed to these icons being torn down. This is part of our community. Please send me the link to participate in tonight's hearing, Jacob Chimino, and hopefully Jacob got that link. Number 12, to whom it may concern, I am very dismayed at the prospect of the Trilon, Ornaton, and Tower Diner block being demolished. As a resident of Rego Park for 66 years, I have cherished my neighborhood landmarks and social locations. I implore you to reconsider this matter, and I know that every local resident is as upset as I am at this major change to our lovely neighborhood. Thank you for your attention to this urgent matter. Sincerely, Rosa Ain Sauls. Number 13, dear members of CB6 and the developer, please read and do everything in your power to save our community icons, the historical Trilon Theater, which is an important Art Deco World's Fair site and a religious site and religious site as Ornaton. Tower Diner must also be saved. We call them beautiful landmarks. Do not tear out the heart of the community. Stop the demolition. Thank you, Saul Perlman. Number 14, to Queens Community Board 6. I am writing to ask that you work as a team to preserve what was known as our cherished Trilon Theater, which has roots from the 1939 to 1940 World's Fair and is very meaningful architecturally. Ornaton has adapted the building and is a beacon of light. Let's save the beloved Tower Diner, which was a significant bank building. Our neighborhood would never be the same without these classic and historic buildings. No more overdevelopment. Preservation is greener and fosters tourism. Let's be proud of our historical buildings and keep them. Thank you, Linda Waxberger, Forest Hills, New York. Number 15, classic architecture, history, and beneficial community services can never be replaced. Very important to protect our landmarks, our values, our sense of place, and who we are as a community in this great city that we love and call home. Anything I can help Michael Perlman with, I'm always in support of his efforts. Regards, Stuart Siller. And actually, Michael Perlman was having some tech difficulties. I don't know if he's on or not. If he's not, he actually sent us testimony as well. It was several pages long, so
Oh
I
my
took
God.
the sort of top portion, and I'm assuming he's not here. Since he's not, I'll read this portion
I
on
don't see
his
him in the
behalf.
list.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been trying to help him get on there. WebEx, like I said, is not easy. I said that I would wait until the end of the
Okay.
public. He really did
We
want
can
to
wait
speak,
then.
so we can always link back to this if he doesn't get on by then.
Sounds good.
So,
So those are
okay.
all of the written responses we had. Let's go to the live speakers. Number one
So
is,
yeah,
sorry,
so
Alexa, do you
the
want to lead or
first
should
and
I?
second are not. I was just doing some kind of housekeeping while you were doing the
Cool.
other. The first two speakers have not.
I'm
They're
actually
not.
seeing Patricia as an attendee right now.
Oh, you do? Maybe she just
Yeah,
got
let me
on.
make her a panelist. Patricia, you should be able to speak now if you unmute yourself.
Okay, I was muted. Make it short and sweet. I am 70. I grew up in the neighborhood, lived here for 67 out of the 70 years. My former colleague Rosalind Sauls expressed my sentiments as well. I think it's important to preserve a solid, stable landmark in the neighborhood. There's also the consideration that if you look at what was the Stratton that is now the TD Bank and that building, they built above it. The same thing with what used to be the Carlton Terrace and the Sterling Bank. They built above it. I don't see why that can't be done with these other landmarks. And yet my concerns about the overdevelopment and the preponderances of high rise. The congestion is getting to be extremely concerning. And I think what we have to do as a community is preserve what we can. Certainly people have to have places to live, but we also need apartments and condominiums and co-ops that are affordable. It's becoming exclusionary. And I think that's a big concern. I taught at the high school with Roz Sauls for 15 out of the 17 years I was there. And what I saw was alarming, where kids would tell me that they had to move out of the neighborhood because their parents couldn't afford the rent. Whatever can be done to keep the community stable and benefit all of us, I think is important. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Patricia. Appreciate it.
You're very
I'm
welcome.
not seeing Jean Einhorn or Michael Perlman in the attendees list, but I did find Dan Bianco. Dan, you should be able to speak now if you unmute yourself.
Hello. My first comment was, I think it would be nice to get an assurance that the bike lane on Queens Boulevard would be protected during construction. Yeah, I know there'll be equipment, there'll be trucks and trailers on Queens Boulevard, I assume, during construction. And I don't expect those to be in the bike lane, but people, when those parking spaces are taken, drivers tend to be irrational and take up whatever space is nearby. So some assurance that the bike lane will be protected. But my main comment is related to Local Law 97. Since this is a building that would be more than 25,000 square feet, it's going to be subject to local law 97. And I was hoping to see in the presentation that there was some thought to how this building will perform go in the future in 2030 and 2035 based on the published greenhouse gas emissions limits that are a part of local law 97. So I would like to have seen some thought about that. And related to local law 97, I think my main concern as a community member is the impact it has on the building to the north and west, kind of behind this lot at 98, I think 9841 Queens Boulevard. It's a 6-story building, over 200 units. If you look at the Building Exchange's website and you use their local law 97 greenhouse gas penalty calculator, that property behind this building is subject to about $200,000 in annual penalties starting in 2035. And I think a solar use of their roof looks like it's prime for a solar array to help them deal with their local 97 compliance. And I'd be very concerned about how the height and the design of this building is going to affect that building's ability.
Dan, it's 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
Oh,
wrap it up.
Thanks, Dan. Those are some good questions. Why don't we go through the rest of the speakers and then we can ask the applicant for answers to those specific questions. Phyllis, I have promoted you to panelist. You should be able to speak now.
Hi. I don't have, a lot of people have gotten into the architectural value of these buildings to this neighborhood, which is very important to me as well. So let's talk about practical matters. Rego Park and Forest Hills combined are a small neighborhood. As Mr. Palatnik pointed out, there are a lot of tall buildings in the neighborhood and several new high-rise buildings that have gone up and new ones that are already going up. So it's not about how this building fits in terms of height with the buildings around it. That's not the issue here. The issue is that we don't need more high-rise buildings to go up in this neighborhood. And so many people in this neighborhood are really disgusted with the overdevelopment. And what does this building do for the people in this neighborhood? I would say nothing. Forest Hills is going to become a crowded, dirty neighborhood, and the very things that make it desirable in the first place will be destroyed by overdevelopment and overcrowding. And think about all of the people and all of the families that are going to be going into all of these buildings and all of these apartments. It is just too much for this neighborhood to absorb. And people talk about, a lot of people that I speak to in the neighborhood and neighbors talk about the increased noise, traffic, parking, shopping, and we don't have enough seats in our schools now. How are we going to absorb all of the new students and the new kids that are going to grow up in this neighborhood? We don't have the seats now, and we have one small hospital in this neighborhood, and that's it. So I really hope that you will think about what the people of this neighborhood want and not just what the developer wants to do for a profit, because we do not want this building. And I hope that the decision will be not to, and I'm just flabbergasted that this.
Phyllis, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Phyllis. Appreciate your comments. I don't see Susan Avery, so I'll go on to the next person. Dorothy, I promoted you to panelist. You should be able to speak if you unmute yourself. Dorothy, you're still on mute if you're trying to speak.
Okay, I think I
There you
got
go.
it.
We can hear you now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having this meeting. I'm going to be short and sweet because I'd like to echo and re-emphasize what Phyllis just said. Congestion is a big problem already on the subway. By the time the subway gets from 67th to 63rd, we're already like sardines. And with an increase in population, it's going to get worse, worse, and worse. And the second thing is future generations are going to look at pictures from this era, and they're going to ask themselves, why did we destroy this beautiful building? I don't know. And also in the present, why destroy our history? it is the character of the neighborhood. And I'm just echoing everyone else who's against the building too.
Great. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The next speaker is Nicole Taravella. I didn't find that name, but I found another Nicole, so it could be a WebEx naming thing. Nicole, you are free to speak if Nicole Sammy is the same person as Nicole Taravella.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Community Board 8. My name is Nicole Sammy, and I am a representative of 32BJ SCIU. I'm here on behalf of my union to share our concern regarding Trilon LLC's proposed development at 9881 Queen Boulevard. We believe the developers should commit to prevailing wage building service jobs in order to build a more equitable economy in New York City. Most building service jobs are filled by local members of the community who need and deserve family-sustaining wages and benefits. Trilon has reached out about making a commitment to prevailing wage jobs for the building service workers, and we will continue to keep the community updated as we hold conversations with the developer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. And we'll get the developer's reaction to that as well after all the speakers have gone. Zeke, you are next. You should be able to speak when you unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Zeke Luer. I'm a Forest Hills resident my whole life. I still live with my parents. What's it called? Yeah, sorry, I'm gonna try to cut through this. Yeah, so if I were to move out of my parents' home, which I'm hoping to do once I graduate, there's no way in hell I'd be able to afford there's no way I'd be able to afford a $2,000 a month rent. That's not affordable. That's already the average rent in our neighborhood. Like, if you look it up online, the average rent in Rego Park is just under $2,000. I don't know where the developers are getting this idea that this is a benefit to the neighborhood, or that you guys were implying that you're going to solve homelessness with $2,000 a month apartments. That's like nonsense. I mean, I remember the first time I walked into the Tower Diner as a kid. Oh, and sorry, and you also mentioned earlier that what's it called? We can get a price on the rents or how much these apartments would sell for, the market rate ones. But someone mentioned $4,000 a month, one of the developers. That is insanely expensive. That is way more expensive than like, most homes for rent now in Forest Hills. And just I don't see any benefits of this development to the neighborhood. I remember when I first entered Tower Diner for the first time as a kid, and looking up in wonder at the beautiful ceiling after looking at hundreds of times traveling down Queens Boulevard, always catching my eye. My synagogue is also about to be sold to developers, and I'm deeply saddened to lose our home. Our synagogue cannot be rehabilitated, but Ornatan can.
Zeke, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. It's been 2 minutes.
Please vote no. Thank you.
Thanks, Zeke. I'm trying to see if any of the other people are in the attendee list
So
now.
actually, I think that Michael Perlman is on as audio. And I believe I'm going to promote a 914 number that I think might be him.
Great.
And let's see. Michael, is that you on a 914 number? I just promoted a 914 number. No, that's
Hello.
not you.
This
Okay.
is Nicole Taravella.
Great. You're next. So why don't you go ahead, and then I'll promote the other number, and that'll be Michael Perlman. So go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, thank you so much. I was born and raised in Queens, and as I've grown up, I've seen a lot of my friends be unable to afford apartments in this neighborhood, and that's very disappointing. So I think we should be making a conscientious effort to have more affordable housing in our neighborhood. Additionally, our neighborhood sadly has a history of fighting low income and affordable housing. most notably with Mario Cuomo and his Forest Hills Compromise. I think it's time for us to really change that pattern. More recently, we had the fight against the Shalimar Diner site being developed, and I think it's an ongoing trend where when we have these new developments, people fight them. More specifically, when they have affordable housing. And I really think that we need to become less exclusionary and elitist in this neighborhood and allow for more opportunities for people of lower incomes to afford housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. Let's go to Michael. Hopefully that next number is Michael Perlman. Or any of the dial-ins, Michael Perlman. If so, feel free to unmute yourself and speak. If not, I just promoted Jacob Schrader. That person might be the same person as the other Jacob who had signed up. If so, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. If not, it might be a different person named Jacob. All right. I know another member of our board who's not on the land use committee had wanted to speak. Pat, why don't you unmute yourself, and you will also have 2 minutes to speak now.
Thank you very much. I wanted to talk about one of the important things of the Tower Diner. My father went to the Tower Diner for many years since it opened. He died in 2007. My father was one of the mayors of the diner. If he didn't appear at the diner when he was supposed to, which was usually twice a day, they called to see where he was, to make sure he was okay. When my dad broke his hip in Atlantic City, I made 3 phone calls. My brother, a relative, and the Tower Diner to let them know that my dad wouldn't be there for dinner that night or for breakfast in the morning. The diner serves a purpose for the community. When people do not show up who are regulars, they will actually send staff over to their homes to make sure that they are okay. The other place that used to do that was Prima Donna Pizzeria. The diner also serves a very important purpose of providing meals for people at the hospital. People who have received bad news come to the diner and discuss over a meal. People who've received great news come to the diner and they celebrate. This diner serves an incredible community of people, and their regulars are treated like gold. And I know that when I didn't appear at the diner when I was supposed to, they actually sent somebody to my home 2 years ago to make sure I was okay. They will call people. Tell me what other businesses in the neighborhood does that.
Pat, I'm sorry, it's been 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Okay, so the 917 for, so this number I'm requesting, that is Michael Perlman, so hopefully he unmutes. And we'll give it a couple minutes, and if not, Permeet, we can go back to your slide. And I just want to say, like, this is a real downfall of meeting remotely, and so thank you everyone for bearing with the technology. I know a number of you were having issues tonight, and I'm sorry. I'm trying to do my best by getting you guys in. I see he's still muted.
What is the key combination you have to press to unmute yourself?
Does anyone know the combination? What do you press to unmute?
Can we not unmute on our end?
No, we can't because he's calling in. So does anyone know how to unmute on WebEx
Sometimes
on the phone?
it's *7, but I don't know about WebEx specifically.
*6. It's *6.
Oh, there you go.
Great, thank you. Michael, please press *6. And then we'll count to, I don't know.
Hello?
Hey, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
Yes.
You have the floor for 2
Awesome.
minutes. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, good evening. Hi, everybody. I want to say it's a sad day when rezoning application and demolition is even being considered of what is truly in spirit community landmarks, the voices of the community residents at large overshadow the LPC. This application, it would demolish historic and distinctive sites and place an economic burden on tenants, not to mention additional congestion and the domino effect of demolitions close by at preservation-worthy sites. Significant sites would forever be at loss. For example, the former 1939 World's Fair-inspired Art Deco-style Trial Theater, the cherished and beloved Tower Diner in a historic bank building. It's a single clock tower is immediately noticeable in Queens Boulevard and prominent. I also love the glass block projection tower. It illuminates our path on a ton. In an interview, Rabbi Nachum Kaziev of Ornatan said, in Judaism, if you raise a synagogue, you'll never have any blessing. In Chernobyl, a synagogue was destroyed during World War II, and a nuclear power plant, it was built in its place, contributing to disaster. Ornatan has had over 1,000 congregants with mostly Bulgarian Jews. They're worried about displacement and also opposed the demolition of a synagogue and historical site. Tower Diner is an example of the American dream. A beautiful family owns it. So there's no reason why Ornatan, Trylon, and Tower Diner cannot be incorporated into harmonious development with additions that is more respectful of our community wishes.
Thank you, Michael.
And the site.
Thank you, Michael. That's been 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. And apologies for the technical issues that you experienced. So that's it for all of the submitted comments that we had and the people who signed up to speak. I'm going to ask Eric, assuming he's still on, I don't know if he is, to respond to some of the things that he just heard. But first, I want to just say that a lot of people in these public comments have asked the community board to do what we can to prevent the current structures from being demolished. And I want to reiterate something I said in the beginning of the presentation, that there's no power that the community board has to prevent any of these existing structures from being demolished. If the developer wants to develop there tomorrow as of right, they would be able to, and the community board wouldn't be able to do anything about it. The only question that we have before us as a board is whether or not we will approve the zoning request. So that's what we are specifically considering. So just saying that again, so everyone's on the same page. So with that being said, Eric, any overall responses to what you just heard in these public comments? And then I have a couple of specific questions that were raised that we'll also get to.
Thank you, and thank you very much for giving us a chance to address some of the comments that were made. Well, the positive news, the non-technical discussion, is the Tower Diner. The Tower Diner has been invited to come back and be relocated there in a new and improved location. It's in their hands whether or not they want to or not. So the Tower Diner is not being forced out. They've been invited to come back. They have another, I understand they have a second location, and they're content with operating that. And Michael, who's on the line, has been in discussions with them and has held out an open hand to them to come back. So to everybody who feels a love for the Tower Diner, we are going to save everything about it if they would like to come back, except for their ceiling that somebody mentioned they enjoyed looking at. But other than that, the same people have been invited to come back. With respect to Local Law 97, thank you. That was a very well-placed question. The building will be fully compliant with Local Law 97, as well as there are other green initiatives being taken on the building. With respect to 32 BJ, we are in discussions with 32 BJ. They spoke during the meeting. It's our intention. They finished by saying they hope to have an agreement with us, and we hope to have an agreement with them as well. So that's with respect to them. And I think that on a very favorable comment that I heard to the application was the young woman that spoke about the need for affordable housing. I think that to all the people that spoke against the development, I think they're sort of the belief that if this does not get approved, that nothing will be built there. Of course, we know that under R71 zoning, something can be built there. Whether or not it's Michael that could afford to do it or another developer in the future, something can be built. We've studied the site with respect to the city's environmental quality review analysis. It's gone through an environmental assessment statement, and we've studied such things as traffic, we've studied noise, we've studied schools, we've studied infrastructure. The building has not triggered any thresholds that would cause any negative impacts with any of those studied categories. Now, we're not saying that New York City is not a crowded and congested place. What we're simply saying is this building is not the tipping point to causing that. And we'd urge you to take the young woman that spoke a moment ago about the need for affordable housing and allow us to take the chance here and take the risk and build the building. A year and a half ago, it was no guarantee that if you built a building, people were going to live in New York. People were leaving in droves. You have a developer that's committed to your community. Let us take the chance and let us build something for the future. So thank you very much for giving us a chance to respond. I'd be happy to respond to any concerns, questions you have for me.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. So we're seeing in the chat that Alan Sherman had signed up to speak, but accidentally got missed. Alan, I promoted you. If you unmute yourself, you'll get your 2 minutes as well. And then I have a couple of closing questions for Eric.
Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, if you don't mind me calling you Eric, thank you for showing us all the reasons not to build. You haven't given us any good reasons to build. Just because there are other tall buildings around you doesn't justify having to build more. You can easily build this up in Albany, Buffalo, Binghamton, Rochester. They can use the people. We have too many people here already. So there's no justification to build another high-rise building. It's insane. And with only 45 parking spots, the bike lanes already screwed us up. I mean, those bike lanes are making congestion even worse. Having all these people move into a building with no parking, that's insanity. I would love to know what drugs these architects are on. You should have parking for everybody who lives in that building.
I'm just going to cut in there and just try to not accuse people of doing things and just keep it civil, please, Alan.
I'm being very civil, believe me. I just don't understand the logic behind building more high-rise buildings. Ooh, he got to build one, I want to build one. That's insanity with the congestion we have already. And those bike lanes destroyed the neighborhood already. And also, when COVID first came, they blamed it on overdensity. Too many people spread COVID. How do we know the next pandemic is not going to do the same thing? We do not need more buildings and save the old. I mean, there's so much history in the Trilon Theater and the Tower Diner. Why would anyone even consider tearing it down? Just build this up in Albany. They can use the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Eric, I have a few questions for you based on some of the comments that we got. The first was related to the bike lane on Queens Boulevard and whether that'll be protected during construction. Is that something you can speak to?
Eric, you're on mute.
There you go. Sorry about that. We do not know the answer to that right now. We will work with the consultant to make sure that the bike lane is left open. Of course, it's going to be subject to transportation.
Actually, Eric, I want to comment on that. The fact that we are an island on our own and that we have all three street frontages, our intention would be to utilize one of the less desirable streets, whether 66th or 99th, to have our trucks or have our staging. And on top of that, it's all going to be temporary. It's going to be a matter of a few months until we move everything inside the building, our trailer, our storage, so forth, so on. But we will not be utilizing Queens Boulevard for anything. We'll be using either 66th or 99th, depending on what DOT prefers for us to do.
Great. Thank you, Michael. The next question I had was local law 97. Someone brought that up. How would that sort of play into sort of account here?
Sorry, can you please repeat that? He broke up.
Yeah, the impact of local law 97. I'm not too familiar with the details there, but if you are, would love to hear more about that.
Local law 97 is an energy compliance law. I believe that requires the buildings to change their fuel consumption. I forget the number of fuel that the buildings are burning right now, but it's requiring them to not burn that because it's a more noxious fuel. So local law 97, I believe, is a push towards that, unless I'm misspeaking. Jay or Alvin, are you familiar, or Michael, are you familiar with the details?
So we have our mechanical engineer, which is a very respected firm, Eric Enninger Engineering, who is designing a energy efficient compliant building. We're also utilizing a green facade, sustainable rooftops, and open areas. So we will be with compliance with Local Law 97 for both the 2025 threshold and 2034 threshold. And God willing, we'll be compliant for whatever years and restrictions they have for after 2034.
Great. And then the last question that we saw in the Q&A that I'll just ask for, and this will be the last one, is if you know what the development's impact on 9841 to install solar on their roof would be.
No, we don't. I don't have a shadow study showing how it would directly impact them done or conducted. We can endeavor to take a look and see what, if any, impact it would have.
Great. And with that, let me just wrap up really quick. I have a quick slide that I'll share again. So I want to thank everyone for their participation, all the panelists, the committee members, the applicant. This was a great meeting. I feel like we all learned a lot. The community members who got to have their voices heard. In terms of next steps, committee members, I'm going to ask you to just very carefully consider everything we've heard and learned in this meeting. A lot of good information from everything related to this project. Next week, we have our whole board meeting. I will do a committee report summarizing a lot of the stuff that we discussed during that meeting, and we'll potentially get some more public comments related to this project at that meeting as well. So given those public comments, what we've discussed today, the totality of everything, I want you to consider that when we conduct our online committee vote the following week. At this point, we have all the information that we're going to get. It's up to us to decide if we're going to approve this rezoning or not. Once we come up with our committee recommendation, the full board will vote in our December CB6 meeting. That meeting is on December 8th, just so it's on people's calendars. Eric, the two major follow-ups that I noted for us is that we would love to follow up with you on the stop sign and on the traffic study. I think those were the things that would be good for us to sort of keep partnering on.
Yeah, and we'll make the commitment right now to both of those.
Sounds good.
So we're committed.
Perfect.
We will be back all then, and we'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I will see most of you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for me. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Be well, be safe.
Good night.
Okay.